Hey, how are you, Brian?
Good. How are you, Keith?
Good, good. This is always one of my favorite shows is to have you on and the dynamic duo brothers.
That's right. Going back a long time.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's true for those who don't know. Brian and I uh, started out working together on a web development agency, web management marketing agency
Hmm.
back in the late '90s, and we ended up doing some very high-end sites together and also some really unique niche sites that were more artistic
Hmm.
um, and professional services or financial law kinds of uh, partners. So
Yeah, it's kind
how
of
you
amazing
been?
to think, Keith, that, where the internet was 25, 26 years ago to now, where there's so much, you look at the evolution of social media and the incorporation of video and it's so many platforms now and the interaction, I think, particularly is what is so different.
Understanding that when you put media out there, you have the ability to create conversations with
Right.
people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing, having come from that media background that I started my career in, now that it's so democratized that, I mean, anybody can do it with a computer and a phone and,
Yep.
all that money spent on a on a degree.
I at that same time when we were working together originally in Stamford, Connecticut,
Yep.
I was supporting our .com efforts by working at a PR agency
Yep.
uh, for about 5 years. Bob Yeager,
Yep.
bless R.I.P. Bob.
Yeah.
He was a great mentor. Um, we were chasing editors in industry trade magazines to write our stories.
Hmm.
And our secret sauce was case studies and
Yeah.
writing stories about what happened from an executive perspective. And usually that was backed up by a white paper that
Right.
explained why, right? But we were dependent on editors to publish for us, and so we had to curry to their favor. And one of the weird things that happened was we started putting case studies on our client websites, and the
Hmm.
editors started saying, "Well, we're not going to use that story because you have already published it." So
Right.
we ended up getting more case study work out
Hmm.
of that because we now had two ways to distribute it,
Yeah.
uh, and that kind of and at that time, I guess a few years later, we started following HubSpot and their inbound marketing,
Yep.
content marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was a mind blowing change. I think their development of their platform and the inbound marketing philosophy that, brands can publish their own materials and you can actually see results, right? Increase traffic, increase conversions, increase sales. And now what it's 12, 15 years later, and to see how well that system really works for brands is pretty amazing.
And over that time, we've gotten really good at doing the onboarding and setting up the revenue operations so the data is in alignment and you
Hmm.
can track that, right?
Right.
From the unwashed audience that you are use, tools like Jiva or
Yeah.
Apollo, right? Where you can and Sales Navigator
Yeah.
uh, to identify that audience and select them, and then start to build your relationship with that audience across LinkedIn and Instagram, your website, YouTube.
Yeah. That's pretty powerful. When you can identify your prospects in a pretty quick and efficient way, and then start communicating with them. Talk about that process that you've kind of discovered recently that we found and started working with.
With our friends at Jiva.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so a fellow named Cliff Serlin back in Connecticut connected me with their CEO, G, who probably, just to step back, we're talking about sales and marketing. This is one of the best sales calls I'd have ever been on.
Yeah.
He got me to talk about myself, surprise, surprise. But, what was our business and how did we serve people with content marketing? And at the end, summary of how he could help me and put
Yeah.
uh, an irresistible deal in front of me. And we've been a
Hmm.
partner ever since.
That's great. And so that's really, the top of the funnel and prospecting and connecting.
Yeah, so let's
And
drop back. It's a suite of tools to help you do outreach across LinkedIn and email
yep.
in a way that is compliant with GDPR, and it uses AI to make a credible approach to people.
Hmm.
And right, just as if you were at a conference, and I found LinkedIn, uh, people are very amenable to
Yeah.
joining your network if you have a soft, well thought out, aligned approach.
Hmm.
Uh, and so Jiva helps to automate that.
Wow.
And yeah, so their tools are integrated to the point where when you have a meeting set up through the prospecting, it
Hmm.
then records the notes, just like we have Fathom or other tools like that.
Right.
Uh, but and then it writes the email follow up based on the transcript and
Wow.
puts it in your drafts,
Yeah.
right?
And it
So
also can help do the homework prior to the meeting so that you have the intelligence to go into the meeting and be somewhat informed
yeah.
on their product, service, company, whatever.
And so to your point, the ability to research an audience in Sales Navigator, bring that
Mhm.
query into Jiva, uh, augment that data so that you can, uh, be prepared for the call,
Mhm.
do the outreach. It's an end-to-end process that integrates with your Gmail or your Outlook and your CRM like HubSpot. Um,
Yeah, and you can measure it all, which is awesome, and test what messages are working and
yeah,
what maybe best customer profiles are responding, and it's
yeah.
pretty amazing.
So,
So,
and then the customer profiles, you you can kind of model with AI and then
mhm,
go out and talk to those people in other ways. But it really helps to do that research on the customer.
yeah.
Um,
So then, kind of bringing it back full circle to the content marketing, it's almost like the step two, in today's environment, now becoming an expert in that industry that you're in, being a resource, building authority is really important. Um, so, going back in your career, I know you kind of created an interesting model about publishing, and so and the publisher MO, as you like to call it, and
yep,
maybe
publishers
talk a little
MO.
bit about that, because I always thought that was such a cool idea. As again, everything in the internet was democratizing, who could
Yep.
do what and say what and when and where, and so I thought this was an interesting model that you came up with.
So yeah, we made that transition, right? We were doing PR and events and
Mhm.
in the analog world, and HubSpot was publishing about inbound marketing, and uh, there were brands that were starting to create a magazine, and now you're fully transitioning away from getting an editor to cover it for you to doing your own coverage of the market,
Mhm.
and so just as the publisher is building an audience and monetizing it with advertising, what we did was connect the dots that by doing that with HubSpot, you are able to see the content that people are consuming as they go through from their perspective, their journey, but
Hmm.
from your perspective, your sales process, right? So you're aligning that and then seeing the media that they're consuming along the way,
Right.
email and by channel, email, LinkedIn, and so forth. Well, we had the opportunity to do this for Kodak, and uh, we were sitting in a room. Well, what are we going to call it? And someone said Chief Packaging Officer, and it's a long story, but I'll just say that name stuck,
Hmm.
right? And we did that, and we came up with a formula of I think it was a half a dozen articles a month. Um, a At that time we were doing a lot of webinars and speeches at conferences. So we started using that material and inviting people. And then we had the recordings and we wrote blogs from that. Um, we had a college student that was also researching industry news that we were publishing a synopsis of and then pointing back to the industry authority that published that.
Yep.
And the funny thing was, when we started doing that under the Kodak brand, the packaging industry trade magazine wanted to try to send us a cease and desist. Hey, don't publish about the industry. That's our job.
Right.
And we called them on, that was fair use, and we were actually
Right.
sending traffic to them
Hmm.
and giving them credit for covering the industry, and we worked it out. But that always really kind of captured for me the tension that comes along with these changes.
Yeah.
Um, and now we've had the opportunity to launch several publications, usually alongside a webinar or podcast kind of format. So that
Hmm.
helps generate the content.
Yep.
And then you choose your distribution channels, right?
Mhm.
Let's just focus on LinkedIn, is
Yep.
what many B2B companies are doing,
Right.
for example, where others are more of an Instagram kind of audience or Facebook.
Yeah.
Uh, and then
Yeah.
another,
So ultimately, in this model, what you're doing is you're controlling the narrative and creating the narrative and building the expertise, and then you're building an audience, and then you're building leads, and then that can be handed off to sales for, essentially for sales. So
yep.
and I'm sure you saw it build and build and build on, all of these different key metrics over time as well.
So the amazing thing was that exactly. So we did all these kind of things and said, if I was a publisher, what would I do?
Right.
And we put it into a formula, and um, we were able to fill the pipeline with $59 million in leads,
Wow.
which was about 50 leads.
Hmm.
They had a very high-end ticket, so this works really well with high-end sales,
Yep.
$30,000,
Yep.
$100,000, $1 million,
Yep.
um, because the ROI is there, and you don't have to close many sales. So we had an ROI model
Right.
around this that we started with, and lo and behold, 2 years later, we had the pipeline filled, and they sold the company for 8 times the original offer because they were able to show, here's what's in the pipeline and
Wow.
how we generate that, by producing content and hosting events and
Hmm.
featuring our customers, telling customer stories, and
Yep.
uh, right. And
Yep.
so that was eye-opening. That had brought it full circle to where we started, to get chasing other people to put our stories out there to now doing it ourselves.
Hmm. Wow.
And
That's
so
fascinating.
it was a cool experience, and I knew it was big,
Hmm.
and I captured it in a book we have on Amazon,
Hmm.
in a little 100-page short book, but it's the executive levels view of how to set this up and how to manage your team
Right.
so that you get results from it. And it's really just it's a methodology that can be taught to a department or a
Mhm.
company.
And that book's called The Publisher MO.
It's called The New Content Culture
Oh, that's right. That's right.
on
The
on
system of
Amazon. And
called The
then
Publisher MO.
we have another version of that same book. It's shorter. I think it's about 40 pages, that we also you can download from our website, sort of the
Mhm.
abridged version. and you can see the methodology. There's a schematic on how to set up HubSpot or any CRM, marketing automation system.
Hmm.
So we've published the methodology, and we're helping train people and get that set up, and then support them with content creation and distribution.
Yeah. That's really cool. I mean, I almost make the analogy now, for years and years, the television studios and the movie studios, they controlled all of the entertainment and the news, and now, you have content creators on YouTube and TikTok and Facebook that are, they're rivaling what the studios are doing for a fraction of the costs of the
Yep.
development, that these studios have been doing for decades. So it's pretty
It's
interesting.
very interesting how some people just, they gravitate to being an influencer. They don't mind being out front. There's other executives that don't, but you can accomplish, if you don't want to learn the lines and rehearse and do, take all the time that it takes
Hmm.
when you get media training, you can also just do an interview
Right,
like we're doing, or a conversation right now, what we're
right,
doing right now.
right,
Um, and with the AI, now our production to do this, take this interview and turn it into a blog post, an article,
right.
a LinkedIn, write all of the forms of content. You can turn an interview like this into that material.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the repurposing is endless, and the amount of content. I mean, let's just take this discussion, for example. You mentioned it can be a blog, it can be several video clips, it could be several social media posts. You can incorporate the content into a newsletter. I mean, it's this one piece of
Right,
content can turn into tens of pieces and really fill your editorial calendar in a
right.
purposeful way.
And this is the fun stuff. Uh, s- what I love is working with executives like Darlene and Eric today,
Yeah.
right? We had that call with them, and they got so engaged about who their audience was and what the
Mhm.
messaging was. They were very conscious that healthcare had a very different message than hospitality for the same
Right.
technology.
Yep.
So, okay, well, what does the person in hospitality care about for their solution?
Right.
And that customer, we know at any given time that we were online, we built a list of 14,000 people,
Hmm.
right, today.
Right.
Well, how many of those 14,000 might be buying? And they're all on LinkedIn, and we can
Right.
publish to them, we can advertise to them,
Hmm.
uh, and say, hey, if you're looking to solve this problem, we have a solution.
Yeah.
And um, that that executive that really knows they have an audience and there's thousands of them out there, and how do I reach them, when they click on and say I'm ready to work on this, it gets
Hmm.
exciting. It
Right.
really gets exciting.
Yeah, and then to kind of bring it back full circle to content, it's you know in today's day and age where everybody's attention is being blown up on phones and computers and TV screens and what have you,
Mhm.
there's a need to constantly put out content so that you're top of mind, right? It's still an awareness play, but then you also have that opportunity to continue to educate and position yourself as an expert.
Yep.
And
And
that's,
whether they find you in the media,
mhm,
or I always like to say, if you meet somebody at a conference and they're going to start engaging with you, what's the first thing they're going to do? Research.
right. They're going to go to your website. They're going to go online, and I think that the difference today than just maybe even a year ago or two is that now people are starting to go to AI.
Hmm.
So that's a whole nother framework of why building authority and trust and expertise is so important, because the very same principles that help with inbound marketing help with being listed on AI as well. So
That's right. AI search.
yeah, yeah.
Um, So that set of discovery, you also have, we talked earlier, you also have your own journey where you had the opportunity to manage a project like this, but
Mhm.
yours didn't sell in 2 years like ours did, right? We had an M&A deal come out of it, which I thought
Right.
was really, right, cool about, hey, here's a
Mhm.
corporate media property that went with the M&A deal.
Yep.
Uh, you were able to manage it for a long period of time. Tell us about your experience.
Yeah, so I worked for a senior living organization that managed retirement communities, fairly high-end retirement communities. And, this was a business that was um, one that was a high dollar sale. It was a long sales cycle. It could be anywhere from a year, 2 years, 5 years before people
Right.
might pull the trigger to want to move into a retirement community. But it was also one of those that was really fraught with a lot of questions because people wanted to know what they were getting,
Right.
when they were moving in. They wanted to know, what the costs were, what the amenities were, and then of course there was really rich opportunities to do storytelling about our residents and our staff at the organization. And so, inbound marketing seemed like a very good fit for this type of industry. And so we implemented HubSpot and started really putting together this full cycle of doing blogs and pushing it out on social media. And Rome's not built in a day, so over time we added more media properties. And at some point I got the idea of using the publisher MO, because the organization had been doing a magazine for years and sending it out to a large database that we had developed through you know doing direct mail
Mhm.
and our prospect lists. And so then we decided, oh, let's brand the blog under the same brand um, as the magazine. And then um, we started doing e-newsletters, pushing out all the blog content that we were doing. And then we started doing video series on topics about wellness and Alzheimer's and dementia and pushing that out weekly. And then, so the video series, and then it became a podcast. So we just kept building the media properties over time,
Mhm.
in this very, vertical fashion under the what we were calling linkage. And
And
what
as
was
VP, you also had access to the resources to do some sponsorships and advertising in the local community. So I remember you were doing media deals with uh, the local public television station.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we were doing traditional advertising and, with public TV, public radio, some neighborhood publications. And so we were pushing a lot of that content out in our advertising that we were doing. Again, really placing ourselves as the expert in aging services in the region. And then what I saw, what I observed in the metrics was, we were able to increase domain authority to that of, what national companies were doing, huge multi-site organizations, because we were, a regional company. We saw website traffic really build. It quadrupled over 10 years, pretty quickly. I'd say within the first 2, 3, 4 years, we're able to double it, just
Mm.
organically. So that was really kind of cool to watch. But then to your point, then as we were generating leads through advertising, that people came to the website and they're opting into our newsletters and sending in sales requests. It builds this audience that just took off from really nothing into thousands each year which then compounds year after year after year. And so you just build this authority in the marketplace. And then again, to your point, it builds the pipeline. And you could see people would start, 1 year, and then the next year they come back and actually be in the sales pipeline and moving into our communities. So
Right.
it's really a cool, I think a really cool methodology, if not strategy, to really implement. Now, it's a long-term strategy, whereas, you talk about Jiva and the implementation of that to identify leads in the short term, but this really both augments your traditional advertising, your lead generation, and your current sales efforts to really
Right.
help drive those sales.
And there's a way that you can go about to set it up. I think that's
Hmm.
what a lot of people miss,
Yep.
is that it's a repeatable. Somebody once said to me, every good executive has a process,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And this is a process that you can implement and train people, and whether your team is 2 or 20, um, you, it's very helpful to be able to give people the 50,000-foot view of this is what we're doing,
Yeah.
and you can assign people to do research to pick the tools
Hmm.
within that process.
Yep. Well, and I think the other thing is the nice thing, even in the model that we did at Episcopal Retirement Services, at one point we did it with external, contractors and vendors to bring their expertise where we needed it. And then ultimately, as we learned how to do it, we built an internal team to really execute it all. And
Mm.
I was really proud of the team, that came in and did it, that was able to help build, this huge infrastructure around publishing. And it really was supported by the entire organization, and became a part of our vision and our strategic planning initiatives to really,
Mm.
again, be that expert in the market that we were serving. So that was, I think, what I was most proud of, that it really got embedded in our culture.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And you mentioned a moment ago, people connecting and maybe attending one of your events, and then you see them on the newsletter, and
Yep.
eventually they're now in the sales pipeline.
Hmm.
And one of the neat things about this is that as you're working at the big audience level, you're using a set of tools to uh, send messaging to. But then when somebody does make it into that sales funnel, you also have content to share along their journey, right?
Absolutely.
The questions that they have now that their brain is locked in on trying to make a decision.
Yeah, I think that's the key, Keith, is knowing what the questions are that the consumer has in their minds at various different stages of the sales process,
Hmm.
and being able to answer that. And then again, that's what Google and the AI, systems are going to pick up on. And especially now that we're at the beginning of the AI, there's an incredible opportunity for companies and brands to be able to be referenced when those questions come up. So I
Hmm.
would really highly encourage people to start thinking a little bit more fully about their marketing beyond just traditional advertising and lead generation, and really focus on what is the consumer thinking, what are they asking, and answering those questions.
Yep. Well, it's exciting times, and now that we've been starting to work together, we've got several of these projects underway,
Yep.
um, and we're very video focused. We'll probably post some examples along with this as we start to share this story.
Yep.
Uh, but I look forward to seeing you online. It's been time well spent, and look forward to seeing you next week.
All right, we'll pick it up then.
Have a great weekend.
You
And
too.
thanks everybody for checking us out. Have a great day.